Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Below, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today Bryan Ukena, the CEO for Recycle Ann Arbor. Welcome to Conversations and welcome to Ann Arbor.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I
It's a
say
pleasure.
that because you've been in Ann Arbor now for what, just over 2 months?
2 months now. Yep.
And as the CEO, what led you to Ann Arbor?
I've been following Recycle Ann Arbor for many years. I worked with I was co-president of a sister organization in the Twin Cities, similar to Recycle Ann Arbor, and have admired Recycle Ann Arbor and the city of Ann Arbor for a lot of years, and the recycling stuff that they're doing.
What in your background and education led you to this sort of area of recycling and the environment and those related topics?
Yeah, it's really zero waste is what we call it. It's a whole different sort of way of thinking and a whole different lifestyle. A number of things led me there. When growing up, my grandparents were real influential with me, and they had a philosophy. They lived through the Depression and through the Dust
Right.
Bowl, and had a very a philosophy that taught that wasting anything
Right.
isn't valuable. It's not a admirable quality. So wasting people, wasting resources, wasting anything is not a wise thing to do on the farm or for anywhere else. So that was influential to me and kind of led me in that direction. And I sort of had this aha moment in my life when I was young. And every winter I would go down to Key West and spend the winter in Key West and work
Nice.
down there
Yeah.
and try to make a living. And every night the sun would set over this, looked like a haystack pile in Key West, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I was living in a little Airstream travel trailer. I just picked up, moved my
Right.
life down to Key West, and so I was living in a real small space. I was real aware of space and utilization of space and waste, and so when I saw that sun setting over that haystack, every night I saw it, and I had to figure out what the heck it was. So
And then the next morning, life would go on. You forget about
I
what
did
the
go.
haystack was.
So eventually I did. I said, I'm going into Key West and I'm going to figure out what that is. And it was actually the incinerator ash pile from Key West. So they have an incinerator and they burn their
Right.
trash. So this was just the ash from the waste from Key West. And it was actually the tallest structure in Key West at the time.
Yeah.
So that was an aha moment for me, that there's got to be a better way to do this than just burn it and then there's this giant pile of ash. So when I got back to Arkansas, which is where I was living at the time, and was most of my career was in Arkansas, I went back and we started a recycling committee and worked with then Governor Clinton and set up recycling programs in Arkansas. So that was real influential for me as well. And the people that I worked around in that sort of recycling community, and the ethics and the vitality that the people had working in that area
And
was just really
I
important.
would say, and that became your vocation as opposed to just your, you say, commitment and interest. It led to jobs.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you just came from the Twin Cities. Now, you said a sister type organization there. What kinds of things were the Twin Cities involved in? What were you directly involved in that led you then to come to Ann Arbor?
Yeah, I think like Ann Arbor, Recycle Ann Arbor, who has a number of, some people would call them business divisions, some people call them enterprises. I call them demonstrations. They're just demonstrations that show there's a better way to handle
Yeah.
waste than the way we're currently doing it. And Eureka Recycling had similar demonstrations, had a big recycling facility, and actually processed all of the city of Minneapolis and the city of St. Paul's material, all the recyclables that got collected, and did the collections for the cities and those types of things. So it was a pretty good sized nonprofit there in the Twin Cities, and does similar things here in Recycle Ann Arbor does real similar things. So
Right.
I've always had an affinity for Recycle Ann Arbor and always watched Ann Arbor, and they've been mentors of mine.
Well, as CEO, which sounds like a nice, sit in an office and let others do the work, so to speak. What is it that you do as CEO? What's your day like?
It's really creating and maintaining vision, and that's a real important part. It's so easy when you're caught up. There's 5 businesses basically that are
Okay.
running day to day, and there's a lot. It's a $6.5 million budget, 45 employees, so there's a lot of worky work
Yeah.
sort of to do here, and just sort of keeping the businesses profitable and operational. But the key part of the CEO's role is to keep our eye on the prize and not get sort of mired in the day-to-day work. But that's why most people that work at Recycle Ann Arbor are there. They're really inspired by the reason that Recycle Ann Arbor does what it does, not the actual work, day-to-day work, but the vision.
Yeah.
So that's a real important component.
You mentioned 5 departments, 5 things that the Recycling Ann Arbor is involved in. What are those 5?
Yeah. So the first is the reuse center, and that's on Industrial Highway here,
Right.
And that's the demonstration that things can be reused,
Right.
and they still have value, even though people tend to just want to get rid of them. There's
They
value
may not
in
have
second
value
life.
for you, but it may have value for someone else. Then.
One man's trash is another
Right.
man's treasure kind of thing. So it's about 20,000 feet of square feet of all kinds of items. Now we're unique in that sort of reuse center. You probably heard of Salvation Army and
Right.
Goodwill and those that are focused, a lot on clothing
Right.
and textiles and those kinds of things. The reuse center is focused on building materials
Okay.
and also furniture and tools and a number of different things that your average reuse center doesn't, wouldn't be involved in. So
So it's not so much the personal items, so to speak, but more the both household and, as you say, construction, building, those types of things, as opposed to the clothes and shoes and books.
yeah, that's what now books is a big part of the reuse center
okay.
too. They, just a quick story. I mean, people bring their books in, drop them off, and we get the most amazing books. And we have two people that are just the most avid readers I've ever met, and they understand books and they understand the value of books and which ones need to be segregated out and maybe which ones need to be recycled. And so they found over the years there was one book that had actually been rebound, but it was literally from the 16th century.
Wow.
And
Okay.
the actual print, and it was about sort of gossip about the different kings. And we actually took it to the University of Michigan, and now it's on display and
Okay.
part of that. So
Yeah.
so that type of thing for the books, but the idea is really to demonstrate that those things, that your household ironing boards and lamps and furniture, but your tub and your other items still have value. So that's sort of the reason we.
And that is open when?
It's open most days, and you can go to our website and kind of check out. But it is open on Saturday and Sunday, so it's something you can do on the weekend as well.
And you don't need to arrange, if you want to bring over books, or you want to bring over, you're redoing your bathroom, and you've got a bathroom sink and a tub you want to get rid of, but you don't want to just lay it out on the street. That can be. Do you have to arrange a time for it, or
You
can
don't.
just
There,
bring
there's
it during
certain
the normal times?
Yeah, the normal drop-off hours, and they're a little bit different
Yeah.
than the operating hours. So you just again either go to the website or call our hotline and find out. But that's the nice thing is there's somebody to help you unload it. There's somebody there to let you know. Now we can't take everything,
Right.
so we'll tell you, nope, that's not an item that can be resold in
But
this
down
market.
the street, there's the
there's
Salvation
the-
Army. There's
exactly.
the thrift shop for the PTO and
Exactly.
other
Yeah. So
local areas. things.
kind of and we get everything you can imagine. Just lately, we got just here recently, sort of a Halloween story. We got an actual headstone from somebody had replaced their old
Okay.
headstone and with
Well,
a,
not
with a
theirs,
new one.
hopefully, but
no,
yeah.
one of their
Yeah.
relatives or one of their kin, and so we got the headstone, and a gentleman purchased it to
Right.
make a marble tabletop
wow.
out of
Okay.
it, so it gets another life.
Yep.
So we get all kinds of stuff.
Now, so that's one of the 5. That's something which most people, I would think, if they know about Ann Arbor and recycle, know about reuse. What's another one of those 5?
Probably one of the things that people are most accustomed to in Ann Arbor seeing is the actual curbside collection of the recyclables. We've held SKYLINE Arbor's held that contract since recycling started in Ann Arbor for over 35 years, and so that's where the trucks come around and pick up the carts and empty the carts. That's probably the most recognizable thing on a day-to-day basis, and the most interaction we have with people sort of on a day-to-day basis.
What types of things shouldn't people put in that?
That's a good question, because right now it's a big deal. People want to sort of wish cycle. They, and I'm the same way. I want it to be recyclable. I really do. So I figure if I just stick it in the cart, maybe it'll get recycled. But that's really damaged recycling. And so what we need to do is sort of get back to what we know is recyclable. And so keeping especially hoses and plastic swimming pools and tarps.
Laughing, but it's the things I wouldn't even think about putting in.
But if you think about it, it's reasonable. People think, well, it's plastic, so plastic's recyclable, so I'll see if I can stick it in there.
And we got away from having to look at the little triangle on the bottom of whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Yes.
To the point of essentially all plastic.
What we're looking for is plastic bottles, and so plastic bottles, and then smaller, bulky containers and things like that. So if you stick with that, you don't have to worry about looking on the bottom and trying to find that little.
And pretty much all liquids are not recyclable.
That's true. Yeah, you need to get the
oil
liquids out.
and paint to pop cans that haven't been opened, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't want to put those in your recycling cart at the curbside. But there are opportunities for used motor oil and things, and that's the drop-off station, which I can talk about a little bit.
Well, we're going to take a short break and come back and talk about the drop-off center and the other things that SKYLINE Arbor is involved in.
Sure.
Ask our viewers to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Did you know that CTN welcomes the members of the Ann Arbor City Council to Ward Talk? On the third Wednesday of every month, a different representative from one of the city's 5 wards joins us in the studio to discuss matters important to the people and government of Ann Arbor. Submit your questions for the next episode of Ward Talk by emailing ctn@a2gov.org or visiting our Twitter page @CTN Ann Arbor.
Sunny, but a bit breezy. It's a perfect day for a bike ride. But wait, you forgot something important.
Wearing a helmet is the most important factor to minimize injury and even death if a cyclist is involved in any kind of accident. Although it isn't mandatory, it is highly recommended for every cyclist.
Dana Denta, host of FYI. Tune in Monday through Friday at 10, 6, and 10 on Channel 19 for all the great local programming that pertains to you.
Hello and welcome back to Conversations. I'm speaking today with Bryan Ukena, the CEO for the Recycle Ann Arbor. And before the break, we talked about the reuse center and the household pickup of recycling that. What else, though, is Recycle Ann Arbor involved in? Because you mentioned 5, so we've got a couple more to
Sure.
touch
So
base on.
once the material gets collected from the households, we got to do something with it.
Yeah.
And yes, the material does get recycled, and that's the value of having a nonprofit as your service provider. Material has to be processed, and so we're currently the entity that actually we transfer it right now to another processor. We're looking forward to a day where we don't do that, but right now we transfer it to kind of a distant facility, but it does get recycled. So that's
and that's where it gets separated, sorted. Plastics get put in one place, papers in another, and all the different types of levels of items.
Of sorting, yeah, and it's pretty sophisticated facility with optic sorters and air jets and all kinds of. It's a cool tour if you ever want to see it, and I think that's the single stream has made it where that material you have to use a lot of mechanical methods, but people touch that material, so keeping that material rinsed and keeping the sharps out of there, the syringes and those kinds of things. Very important, because those are people, and we want to give them good working jobs. So that's the next sort of phase, is the processing, and as you mentioned a minute ago about the different things that aren't recyclable, the education program is a big part of that processing. So we need to make sure.
And what takes place? How does Recycle Ann Arbor try to educate the people?
There are a number. Dozens of ways through social media, through outreach. We do actually showing up at many hundreds of events, and then the outreach that we do related to just the typical pamphlets and those kinds of things. But
one thing I don't know if it was Recycle Ann Arbor, if it is the farmers market or whatever, but the monthly food trucks in the summer that on the Wednesdays at the farmers market. There are usually individuals who are standing the whole time behind the recycle sort of bins to help people determine which you could say hole to put the trash in.
Yeah, that's another program that Recycle Ann Arbor has, and it's our zero waste events program. So we show up at events, and we actually have stewards or people that actually help educate people, and you create those aha moments for people where they say, oh, that's recyclable, sure. Yeah. And sort of you go through the line and you put your recyclables in one place, your compostables in another place, and so on. And you get to the end of the line and you don't have anything, and you think, wow, zero waste really is possible. So that's what those events programs are like. So that's another education tool that we use.
Yep.
I think another one is our drop-off station. And so for what can't be picked up at the curb, but it's still recyclable, those kind of odd items like block styrofoam or big giant bulky refrigerator boxes or scrap metals, ironing boards, those kind of scrap metals, kind of things like that. And then your yard waste, if you want to take it there. That's also a place where you can take your motor oil or your antifreeze. You can take your electronics, latex-based paints, not oil-based, but there is a household hazardous waste program for that, but we can take latex-based paints.
You mentioned electronics. All televisions, the reason I'm asking is I know that whether it's Recycle Ann Arbor or the U of M, once or twice a year has a drop-off where for a 4-hour period on a Saturday you can bring your computers, you can bring your monitors, you can bring your televisions.
Yes.
Is that actually something that the drop-off center can take anytime?
You can bring it there anytime that they're open. And again, you can look on our website, recycleanarbor.org, and find out when they're open. But yeah, year round.
So you don't have to wait till these designated Saturdays
That's
to
right.
drop it off.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's a host of electronics. It's everything from TVs to cell phones to you name it. Yeah.
Now, will any of that end up getting brought back over to the reuse center, or is the assumption that it's all non-usable?
Well, on the electronics, you have to be a little bit careful protecting people's privacy. So
Right.
there's certain things that we cannot
Okay.
attempt to reuse, but there are other things like sometimes good working televisions or monitors or keyboards and those kinds
Right.
of things that'll get reused
Okay.
again. So
Okay.
yeah, we go through everything and make sure if it can be reused, we'll take it to the reuse center.
Is it fair to say that if a person had a question in their mind about something being able to be reused, recycled, or something done with it other than simply putting it into a dumpster or putting it into the trash system, that your website is where to possibly turn to get a sense of what's possible?
I think that's a great place to start. And
what is your website?
It's recycleanarbor.org. So
Easy enough?
it's easy enough to go there, and that's a good place to start. But if you want to talk to a human being, we have a hotline, and the phone number's on the website where you can call. And so if you have a very specific question, they're happy to answer those questions.
It seems as if Ann Arbor 20 years ago was a leader nationally in recycling, and then it seems like others have sort of been either more creative or passed us by. Looking to the future, what are the types of things you see Recycle Ann Arbor either getting involved in or maybe doing better or just refocusing?
I think there are some things that there are some reasons why Ann Arbor's sort of, I think in some people's mind, fallen behind. But the recycling industry as a whole has a challenge in people just sort of thinking, oh, recycling, of course you do recycling, check, done, and sort of moved on to other sort of sexier issues.
But Ann Arbor and Michigan is behind many other states and many other communities where they had been out front.
Absolutely, as far as innovative programs, as far as recovery rates and those kinds of things. And part of that is, we need to have good public policy so we don't have too many landfills so that they're so inexpensive. We need good public policy on a local level so that we have good support for the recycling program. So I think those are things that Recycle Ann Arbor will be focusing on. I think bringing the recycling back to Ann Arbor so that the material gets processed right in our own community and we bring those jobs and that value right back to Ann Arbor. So that's something that Recycle Ann Arbor wants to focus on as well. I think this idea, the city is working with the county and Recycle Ann Arbor and others to try to regionalize so we can all kind of cooperate and work together to create enough economies of scale to make it where we have sustainable recycling. So that regionalization sort of process and building a solid waste authority where everybody's sort of working together and everybody gets the same message too. You go to Ypsilanti, you get different message about what's recyclable than you do Ann Arbor. So sort of harmonizing those recycling messages is something that Recycle Ann Arbor wants to be heavily involved in. I think the business community is very interested in pushing the envelope and making some things happening, and that's been, you talk about, sort of slipped. I think the business community is ready to move forward and has been neglected to some degree, and so Recycle Ann Arbor will be working on the downtown district and how tight it is, the space constraints and the issues.
Not a lot of alleys, not a lot
of
you go down State Street on a Saturday night after 10 o'clock, and it's filled with the trash and recyclable bins all along, waiting to get picked up because they don't have places to store it or wait for a pickup.
That's true. So creating that just-in-time sort of service for that downtown community is a real important goal of Recycle Ann Arbor's too, and that helps push the envelope so that the restaurants down there, hundreds, feel comfortable saying, yeah, I want to implement composting down there. And right now they're thinking, oh,
Yeah.
there's already such a mess. I don't know if we want to do anything. So sort of getting organics recycling going down with the business community and with the residents too. It's an amazing community that we offer. Every resident has the opportunity to compost their food scraps, and I think just from an environmental and a sustainability perspective, that's one of the best things you can do on a daily basis. People talk about the real power of voting and how neat that is. Recycling and composting are something you can do every day in your house. It doesn't cost a whole lot of money. You don't have to buy a solar array or an electric vehicle or something to be sustainable. It's a very valuable thing.
The elephant in the room is the University of Michigan, because you could say do their own thing, right? Because they're not technically a part of the city. Recycle Ann Arbor does not collect their recyclables, correct?
They have their own system that
Right.
they use, but they transfer their material to another processor. And this sort of idea of let's bring it back to Ann Arbor, the university's very interested in and would like to do something like that. So that regionalization sort of process.
And that may be one way of sort of incorporating or bringing in
Yes.
all of that.
Yes, under one roof, and then it's more affordable for everybody if we
Right.
share those costs. So.
Well, in the last minute or two here, if you were to look down 6 months, 12 months from now, what are things you would like to either have accomplished or put into, you say, people's minds or put into action in the next, 6 to 12 months?
I would like to offer the city proposals and hopefully implement programs that do move us closer to processing the material right here in the city, and also proposals to sort of help with that downtown congestion issue and hopefully creating opportunities.
Now, as a nonprofit, would that be done totally through Recycle, or is that something working directly now with the city?
And that's
Because they're the ones who potentially have the authority or the power to institute ordinances and limitations.
It's kind of a perfect, that's why I love Recycle Ann Arbor and other nonprofits. It's kind of this perfect public-private partnership. And yes, it takes the city's leadership and resources and guidance to create those programs, and it takes a good mission-based organization to implement those programs. And so yes, it will take collaboration among the city and the downtown business district and the other recyclers like University of Michigan and those. That collaboration is absolutely necessary. It won't happen otherwise.
Well, one more time, to access the website is?
Recycle Ann Arbor, all one word, all lowercase, .org. RecycleAnnArbor.org.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you in Ann Arbor and coming in and talking about the efforts of Recycle Ann Arbor.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. I want to thank our viewers for joining us today. Look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.